No one noticed the silence at first. The airport was already loud with engines. Hurried footsteps, phones ringing, people announcing arrivals and goodbyes like they mattered more than everyone else's. A line of black cars waited near the private exit, polished, identical, expensive in the way that didn't ask for attention. It commanded it. And then there was the last car. Not larger, not shinier, just deliberate. When the back door opened, a young woman stepped out alone. Her name was Nola Gray. She wore faded jeans, white sneakers, and a soft cotton top that had clearly been washed many times. Her hair was braided neatly and pulled back. No extensions, no drama. On her shoulder hung a small backpack, light enough to suggest she didn't believe in carrying things she didn't need. People stared anyway. Not at her clothes, not really. At the contrast, the convoy, the quiet girl. The mismatch unsettled them, even if they couldn't explain why. Nola paused, letting the morning air settle into her lungs. Lagos smelled the same as it always had. Heat, movement, possibility. She hadn't been back in almost 7 years. "Welcome home." The voice came from behind her. She turned and saw Caleb Gray, her father, tall and composed, wearing the same unreadable expression that had made boardrooms nervous for decades. He didn't rush forward. He never did. When he hugged her, it was brief but firm, like he was reminding himself she was real. "You look tired," he said. "I'm fine," Nola replied. She always sounded calm even when she wasn't. "Jet lag will wear off." He studied her face, the way fathers do when they're trying to read what their daughters won't say. Then he nodded. "The school term starts today. Ridgecrest Academy, best private institution in the city. I know. You'll have a driver, security, whatever you need." Nola shook her head gently. "I'll manage." Caleb sighed, not irritated, just resigned. He had learned a long time ago that forcing Nola only made her retreat further inward. "You don't have to prove anything," he said quietly. "Not to me." She met his eyes. "I'm not." That was the thing about Nola Gray. She never argued. She simply decided. Ridgecrest Academy didn't open its gates quietly. The school sat behind tall iron fencing, framed by palm trees and manicured hedges. Every morning it became a parade of wealth. Luxury cars rolled in one after another. Chauffeurs opened doors. Students stepped out dressed like fashion editorials disguised as uniforms. They laughed loudly. They greeted each other with practiced affection. Everyone knew who mattered here. So when a girl rolled up on a small electric scooter, parked it carefully by the gate, and removed her helmet without ceremony, the pause was immediate. Heads turned. Whispers began. Did she get lost? Is that a delivery scooter? She's wearing the uniform wrong. 10 minutes later, the school exploded. A white Range Rover pulled up, freshly washed, windows tinted so dark they reflected the sky. The engine hadn't even shut off before a uniformed driver jumped out and opened the door. Gasps, actual gasps. Out stepped Iris Vale. She wore her uniform like it had been tailored to her body alone. Gold bracelets glinted at her wrist. Her shoes clicked sharply against the pavement, each step confident, measured, practiced. She smiled before anyone spoke. It was the smile of someone who expected admiration and usually got it. "That's her," someone whispered. "The new girl." "No, that's Iris Vale. Her family donated the new science wing. I heard her dad owns half the banks in the city." Iris heard everything. She always did, and she let it wash over her like perfume. She waved casually, already familiar with the attention, already addicted to it. Inside the building, her arrival caused a ripple. Students straightened. Girls adjusted their hair. Boys leaned in just a little too much. By the time Iris reached her classroom, the hierarchy had shifted without a single word being spoken. Nola sat at the back, same seat she'd always choose. Near the window, easy exit, minimal visibility. She watched as Iris entered. Their eyes didn't meet, not yet. Iris took the front row seat like it belonged to her. A group formed around her instantly, compliments, questions, soft laughter. "That bag is insane." "Is it custom?" "Paris." Iris smiled, slow and satisfied. "My aunt picked it up for me last summer." The lie slipped out smoothly. She barely noticed it anymore. Across the room, Nola opened her notebook. She wrote the date. The subject, neat handwriting, no wasted movement. "She's definitely rich," someone whispered behind her. "Obviously." Nola paused just for a second, then continued writing. She didn't know it yet, but something had already gone wrong, because Iris Vale had noticed the silence. It started small, a glance, then another. Who was the girl at the back who wasn't staring? Who didn't look impressed? Who didn't look intimidated? Iris leaned toward the girl beside her. Do you know her? The girl shook her head. Probably nobody. Iris smiled again, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. By lunch, the names had started circulating. Scooter girl, scholarship girl, invisible girl. Nola ate alone, not because no one invited her, but because invitations came with expectations she didn't want to meet. She felt it before she heard it. Hey, the voice was sharp, polished. Nola looked up. Iris stood across from her table, arms crossed loosely, head tilted like she was inspecting something she might buy or discard. You dropped this, Iris said, placing nothing on the table. A few students nearby laughed quietly. Nola looked at her calmly. Did I? Iris blinked just once. Something about the way Nola spoke felt off, not rude, not submissive, neutral in a way Iris wasn't used to. You ride a scooter to school, Iris continued, louder now. That's unbrave. Efficient, Nola replied. More laughter, uncertain this time. Iris's smile tightened. Well, good luck fitting in. Nola met her gaze, soft, steady. I'm not here for that. The silence that followed felt heavier than noise. Iris turned away, cheeks warm, pulse irritated. She didn't know why the exchange bothered her so much, but it did. That night, as Nola unpacked in her quiet bedroom overlooking the city, she stood by the window and watched the lights flicker on one by one. She didn't know Iris Vale's name yet. She didn't know Ridgecrest Academy ran on illusions and fear. She didn't know that her decision to stay small had already made her a threat. But somewhere across the city, Iris lay awake staring at her ceiling, replaying the same moment. The girl who didn't bow. The girl who didn't flinch. The girl who arrived with nothing. And for the first time since Iris could remember, admiration curdled into something darker, something hungry, something dangerous. By the second week, Ridgecrest Academy had already decided who mattered. The hallways moved like quiet rivers of influence. You could feel it in the way students shifted when certain people passed, the way laughter rose a little louder near the lockers with the best reputations. Power here wasn't announced. It was sensed, and Iris Vale sat comfortably at the center of it. She didn't raise her voice often. She didn't need to. People leaned in when she spoke. Teachers softened their tone without realizing why. Even the security guards at the gate greeted her with familiarity. Iris had mastered the art of seeming effortless. What no one saw was the work behind it. Every morning she stood in front of her mirror long before sunrise, adjusting the version of herself she planned to present that day. Confidence, wealth, ease. She practiced her smile until it looked natural. She selected jewelry that hinted at luxury without screaming for it. Her phone buzzed constantly. Vanity had a sound. Notifications. Praise. Envy disguised as admiration. Yet something had shifted, because at the edge of her vision, always there now, was Nola Gray. The girl who didn't try. The girl who didn't compete. The girl who made Iris feel watched, even when she wasn't looking. It started with small things. Iris would enter a room and feel the attention gather. Then notice Nola already seated, calm, unbothered, like she'd arrived before the performance began. During group discussions, Nola spoke only when necessary. Her answers thoughtful, precise, hard to dismiss. Teachers noticed. That was the first real irritation. She has a good grasp of the material, one instructor said after class. Iris smiled politely, but something sharp lodged itself beneath her ribs. Why should anyone notice Nola at all? At lunch, Iris leaned toward her closest orbit. Maya, always eager, always agreeing. Theo, charming in a way that bent easily toward whoever held power. She's pretending, Iris said lightly, stabbing her salad. That quiet girl. Maya frowned. Pretending how? That she doesn't care, Iris replied. People like that always do. Theo laughed. She barely exists. Iris didn't laugh, because that wasn't true. Across campus, Nola walked with measured steps, her mind on schedules, lectures, the way the wind curled around the library steps in the afternoon. She was aware of the looks. She just didn't give them permission to live inside her. She'd learned long ago that attention was rarely free. It always asked for something in return. During a literature seminar, the professor posed a question about power and silence in modern narratives. The room hesitated. Then Nola raised her hand. Silence isn't always submission, she said when called on. Sometimes it's strategy. When you speak less, people reveal more. A murmur followed. Iris felt it like a sting. The professor nodded slowly. Interesting perspective. Iris glanced back. For a moment, their eyes met. This time, neither looked away. The rumor started the next day. No one ever knew where such things began. They just appeared, fully formed, like they'd always existed. She's on financial aid. My cousin heard she begged her way in. Why else would she ride a scooter? Iris never said Nola's name aloud. She didn't have to. A raised eyebrow, a casual shrug, a carefully placed laugh. That was enough. By Friday, the whispers followed Nola like a second shadow. She felt them. Felt the shift in the air when she entered a room. Felt the way conversations stopped, then resumed in lower tones. Still, she didn't react. What she didn't know was that restraint only made Iris bolder. The charity gala announcement came over morning assembly. Ridgecrest's annual fundraising event, a night where generosity became spectacle. Donations would be announced publicly, applauded, remembered. Iris sat straighter. This was her stage. At lunch, she spoke loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "My family plans to make a statement," she said casually. "It's important to give back, you know." Maya gasped. "How much?" Iris smiled. "Enough." Nola heard none of this. She sat beneath a tree near the courtyard reading. The sun warmed her shoulders. Her phone buzzed briefly. A message from her father. "Proud of you." She smiled just a little. Iris noticed. The smile bothered her more than the rumors ever could. That evening, Iris stood in her bedroom, phone pressed to her ear. "Mom," she said, pacing. "I need more." A pause. "Yes, I know. I know it's a lot. But this is important." Another pause, longer this time. Iris's jaw tightened. "I said I need it." When the call ended, she stared at her reflection. Breath shallow. Appearances had a cost, and the bill was coming due. The next morning, Iris cornered Nola in the hallway. It wasn't dramatic. No crowd, no raised voices. "People are saying things," Iris said lightly, blocking her path. Nola looked at her. Calm. Curious. People always do. Iris's lips twitched. "You don't seem bothered." "Should I be?" A beat. Iris leaned closer. "This school doesn't reward humility." Nola stepped around her. "I'm not looking for rewards." As she walked away, Iris felt something crack. Not anger, fear. Because for the first time, she understood something she hadn't wanted to admit. Nola Gray wasn't playing the same game, and that made her dangerous. Power didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it arrived quietly, settled into a room, and waited for people to adjust around it. That was the kind of power Nola Gray carried. Though she would never have named it that way, to her it was simply how she moved through the world, observing more than she spoke, listening without reacting, choosing when to care. At Ridgecrest, that kind of restraint was unsettling, because most people here survived on noise. By the third week, the whispers had matured. They no longer sounded curious. They sounded certain. She's definitely broke. She's pretending to be mysterious. She thinks she's better than us. The irony didn't escape Nola, though she never acknowledged it. She noticed how assumptions hardened into conclusions, how people preferred a story they could digest over the truth they hadn't earned. In class, she continued to excel. Not dramatically. Not enough to look threatening. Just enough to remain undeniable. And that was the problem. Iris Vale sat in the front row, fingers tapping lightly against her desk. Every time Nola spoke, the room leaned in. Every time a teacher nodded in approval, something inside Iris tightened. She had spent years curating admiration, years perfecting her image. And now a girl who wore nothing remarkable and wanted nothing visible was pulling attention without asking for it. That kind of influence couldn't be bought. It had to be destroyed. The first public jab came during lunch. Iris stood, tray in hand, and paused beside Nola's table. "Mind if I sit?" she asked sweetly. The surrounding tables quieted. Nola looked up. "It's a free bench." Iris sat, crossing her legs elegantly. "You're very consistent," she said, glancing at Nola's simple outfit. "Ever thought of switching things up?" Nola smiled faintly. "No." A few students snickered. Iris leaned closer. "You know, people assume things when you don't try." "Let them," Nola replied. The calmness irritated Iris more than any insult could have. "Well," Iris said, standing, "I hope the charity gala doesn't make you uncomfortable. All that money in one room." The laughter that followed was sharp. Nola didn't respond, but someone else did. "Is that really necessary?" The voice belonged to Evan Cole. He was everything Ridgecrest admired. Attractive without effort. From old money. Popular, but not desperate for it. He'd built a reputation on being decent in a place that rarely rewarded it. Iris turned, surprised. "I was joking." Evan looked at her steadily. "Didn't sound like it." The silence stretched. Nola gathered her things and stood. "Thanks," she said softly to Evan, then walked away. That single moment changed the temperature of the room, and Iris felt it. That afternoon, Iris locked herself in a bathroom stall and stared at her phone. Evan had never challenged her before. No one did. She opened her messages, scrolled, paused. Then she typed, "She's manipulating people, acting helpless so they defend her." She sent it to Maya, then Theo, then 2 others. It spread quickly. By evening, the narrative had shifted. Nola wasn't just poor now. She was calculative. Nola noticed the difference the next day. The glances were colder, the smiles tighter. Even Evan looked uncomfortable when he passed her in the hall. She didn't confront anyone. She went to the library. Books didn't lie. They didn't perform. They didn't need her to explain herself. As she read, her phone buzzed. A message from her father. "How's school?" She stared at the screen for a moment, then replied, "Fine." It wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth. The charity gala list was posted on Friday. Donations would be announced publicly. Names projected onto a massive screen. Applause guaranteed. Iris stood with her friends scanning the list. Her name sat proudly near the top. Then she froze. "Nola Gray," she read aloud. Maya frowned. "Is that her?" Iris's chest tightened. "How much?" Theo leaned closer. 5 million. The air shifted. That has to be a mistake. There's no way. Iris felt heat crawl up her neck. 5 million. The same amount she planned to donate. Her hands clenched. That evening, Iris stood in her bedroom, lights off, city glowing beyond the glass. She'd spent her life building a fantasy sturdy enough to live inside, and now someone was threatening it without lifting a finger. Nola Gray hadn't challenged her openly, hadn't insulted her, hadn't competed. She had simply existed. And that Iris realized was unforgivable, because silence was only powerful until someone decided to fill it with lies. And Iris was very good at that. The night of the charity gala arrived dressed in elegance and expectation. Ridgecrest Academy transformed itself for the occasion. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling like frozen stars. White fabric draped the walls, softening the sharp edges of wealth into something that looked generous. Cameras waited. Applause rehearsed itself in advance. This was not about kindness. It was about proof. Parents arrived in tailored suits and gowns that whispered money. Students followed, dressed like heirs in training. Every donation would be announced. Every amount remembered. Tonight, generosity would decide relevance. Iris Vale arrived late. Not by accident. Her entrance was calculated. The doors opened. Heads turned. A quiet ripple passed through the hall as she stepped in. Poised, glowing, exactly where she belonged. She smiled. This was her world. Across the room, Nola stood near the back. She wore a simple dark dress, clean lines, no jewelry except a small watch. Her hair was pulled back the way it always was. She blended into the background, and she preferred it that way. Only a few people noticed her. Evan was one of them. He hesitated, then crossed the room. "You came." "I was invited," Nola said lightly. He smiled. "I'm glad." Their brief exchange didn't go unnoticed. Iris watched from across the hall, her fingers tightening around her clutch. The principal took the stage. "Tonight," he began, "we celebrate generosity and the spirit of giving." Applause followed. Names began to appear on the screen. Amounts grew larger. Gasps accompanied the biggest numbers. Parents nodded. Students whispered. Then it was Iris's turn. "Iris Vale," the principal announced, smiling broadly. "A donation of 5 million. The hall erupted. Clapping, cheers, admiration without restraint. Iris stood gracefully, waving modestly, pretending humility while soaking in every second of it. Maya squeezed her arm. Theo leaned in, whispering praise. She sat back down, heart racing. She had won. Or so she thought. The screen shifted. "And next," the principal continued, "Nola Gray. Also 5 million. The room fell into silence. Not the dramatic kind, the confused kind. Heads turned. Whispers sparked like static. Nola remained seated. She didn't smile, didn't stand, didn't acknowledge the moment beyond a small nod to the principal. Evan stared at her, stunned. Iris felt something drop inside her chest. No, this wasn't part of the plan. "That can't be real," Maya whispered. Theo frowned. Where would she even get that kind of money? Iris leaned in, voice sharp and low. "Think about it." Maya's eyes widened. "You don't mean—" Iris's lips curved. "I do." The rumors didn't wait until the event ended. They moved faster than truth ever could. "She's been spending time with Evan. Maybe he paid for it. She probably made some kind of deal." The words were soft but poisonous. Iris listened, encouraged, redirected. By the time guests began to leave, the story had already taken shape. And it was ugly. Nola felt it immediately, the shift in how people looked at her, the weight in the air. Evan walked her to the exit, concern etched across his face. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes," she said. But this time it wasn't entirely true. The next morning, the school buzzed. She bought her way into relevance. She's not as innocent as she pretends. Iris leaned against her locker, surrounded by an eager audience. "I didn't want to say anything," she said softly. "But money like that doesn't come from nowhere." Maya gasped. Theo shook his head. "She fooled everyone," someone muttered. Iris smiled sadly. "Some people are just better at hiding who they are." Across the hall, Nola opened her locker and closed it again. She heard everything. For the first time, she felt tired. Not angry, just tired. Ugh. That afternoon, she sat beneath the same tree in the courtyard. Her phone buzzed. Another message from her father. "Everything okay?" She stared at the screen longer this time. "People are strange," she typed. A moment later, "You're stronger than their noise." She exhaled. But strength didn't mean immunity. From the steps above, Iris watched her. The quiet girl, the unshaken posture, the refusal to break. It felt like an insult. Iris had given everything to be seen. Nola had done nothing, and still she stood. Iris made a decision then. Money hadn't been enough. Humiliation would have to be louder. Warnings at Ridgecrest followed a strict rhythm. Cars arrived. Doors opened. Laughter spilled out. The school fed on routine, on predictability. Everyone knew where they belonged, who they were allowed to be. That was why the disruption felt so sharp. It started with raised voices near the front gate, not loud enough at first to alarm anyone, just enough to draw glances. A few students slowed. Phones hovered in hands, ready. Iris Vale stood near the steps, laughing with Maya when she heard her name. I whispered, called, "Iris." The voice was older, tired, familiar in a way Iris hadn't allowed herself to think about in years. Her smile froze. She turned. A woman stood just outside the gate, holding a small basket covered with cloth. Her dress was simple, faded, clean but worn. Her face carried the kind of exhaustion that came from long days and longer worries. The resemblance was undeniable. Iris's stomach dropped. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, rushing forward. "I told you not to come." A few students stopped walking. Maya frowned. "Who's that?" The woman smiled gently. "I just brought you food. You sounded tired on the phone." Iris grabbed the basket. "You can't be here. Do you know what this looks like?" The woman's smile faltered. "I didn't mean to embarrass you." Too late. Whispers started. Iris glanced around, panic flashing beneath her polished calm. "Go," she whispered sharply. "Just go." The woman hesitated. "Iris, I did everything I could to get you here. Please don't treat me like this." The words cut deeper than she intended. Students stared now. Phones were out. Iris's fear turned into anger. She pushed the basket back into the woman's arms. "Leave," she said, "before you ruin everything." The woman stepped back, stumbled, and fell. The sound was small, but it echoed. A scooter screeched to a halt. Nola had just arrived. She froze when she saw the woman on the ground. Iris standing over her, students watching like this was entertainment. Without hesitation, Nola dropped her bag and rushed forward. "Are you hurt?" she asked, helping the woman sit up. "I'm fine," the woman murmured, shaken. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Nola's jaw tightened. She turned to Iris. "You shouldn't treat anyone like that." Iris's heart pounded. People were watching. Her mind scrambled. Then she smiled. "Oh, please," Iris said loudly. "Why don't you control your mother instead of acting superior?" The words landed hard. Gasps followed. Nola's eyes darkened. "That's not my mother." "Well," Iris shrugged. "She looks like someone who would be." The cruelty was sharp enough to sting the air. Nola stood slowly. "My mother raised me to respect people," she said quietly. "What's your excuse?" The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Even Maya looked away. Nola helped the woman to a bench, speaking softly, offering water. The woman's hands shook. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know she'd react like this." Nola smiled gently. "You didn't do anything wrong." From a distance, Iris watched, her chest tight. The resemblance between them was undeniable now. She saw the looks, the calculations, the questions forming. Fear curled into something darker. Ugh. By lunchtime, the story had already twisted. "Did you see Nola yelling at her mom?" "She's so dramatic. She always wants attention." Iris sat with Maya and Theo, laughing too loudly. She's always pretending to be morally superior, Iris said. It's exhausting. Theo nodded, but his voice lacked conviction. Somewhere inside Iris, relief and dread collided. She'd survived the moment, but cracks had formed. And once people noticed them, they didn't stop looking. That evening, Nola sat in her room replaying the scene. Not with anger, with clarity. She understood something now. This wasn't about popularity, or money, or misunderstanding. This was about someone terrified of not being seen, and terrified people did dangerous things. As the days went on, the bullying intensified. Students whispered behind Nola's back, made fun of her clothes and called her names. But Nola refused to let them see her falter. She reminded herself of her father's words. Your worth isn't in what others think. It's in what you do. Despite everything, Nola stayed focused. She didn't know how long she could endure the cruelty. But she knew one thing for sure. She wouldn't let Iris's lies define her. Iris had been waiting for the right moment. She had watched the way attention bent toward Nola without effort, how teachers softened when Nola spoke, how Evan listened, how even silence seemed to make space for her. And Iris hated that kind of power, because it couldn't be copied, so she manufactured her own. One morning, she walked into the dean's office with her phone clutched tightly in her hand, her expression carefully arranged into concern, not anger, not excitement. Concern always landed better. Sir, Iris began softly, placing the phone on the desk. I wasn't sure if I should bring this to you, but I thought it would be wrong not to. The dean frowned slightly. Bring what? Iris slid the phone forward. On the screen was a photo, grainy, intimate enough to raise questions. Nola, seated across from an older man at a quiet restaurant. The angle was deliberate. The timing, intentional. Nothing explicit but suggestive enough to invite imagination. I don't want to accuse anyone, Iris continued gently. But people are already talking. I thought the school should know before this damages our reputation. The dean stared at the image for a long moment. By afternoon, the summons came. When Nola's name echoed through the hallway, conversations stalled. Heads turned. Whispers began before she even reached the office. She walked in calm as she always did. Nola, the dean said sternly, lifting the phone. This image was brought to my attention this morning. Do you deny being in this photograph? Nola looked at the screen and felt a brief flicker of disbelief. She recognized it immediately. That's my uncle, she said calmly. He was visiting from out of town. We had lunch. The dean leaned back unconvinced. And you expect me to believe that explanation, he replied. When the circumstances suggest otherwise? There it was. The assumption, the readiness to doubt. Before Nola could respond again, the door opened. The vice chancellor stepped in, his tone controlled but sharp. Dean, he said, before this goes any further, you should be aware that Nola is the daughter of one of the Academy's principal board members. The man in that photo is indeed her uncle. His identity and relationship can be verified in minutes. The room went still. The dean's expression changed, slowly, uncomfortably. Outside the office, Iris watched from down the hall, trying to read faces. She couldn't hear what was being said, but she knew something was wrong. The meeting ended too quietly, too quickly. Nola walked out without tears, without explanation, without spectacle. Iris's stomach tightened. Her plan hadn't worked, not because the lie was sloppy, but because Nola's life, the one Iris resented, had protection built into it. Iris didn't sleep that night. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the look on Nola's face as she walked out of the dean's office, untouched, unbroken. No tears, no explanation. Just that same quiet composure that made people trust her without asking why. Iris felt something twist in her chest. The rumor should have destroyed her. It should have stuck. Instead, it slid off Nola like rain. By morning, Iris had decided, if lies whispered couldn't do the job, then spectacle would. Something public, something undeniable, something that would force everyone to finally see her as the girl she had been pretending to be. The idea came to her fully formed. The mansion. She needed something bigger, louder, irrefutable. The mansion. The estate where her mother worked. The one people spoke about in hushed tones. The one Nola barely mentioned, like it wasn't the axis her world turned on. Iris knew the routines, the quiet hours, which wing stayed unused. She knew that the owners traveled often, that the house was big enough for entire rooms to stay invisible. All she needed was one night. Convincing her mother was harder. Iris, no, Mrs. Vale whispered, panic already in her voice. You don't understand what you're asking. If they find out, I lose everything. Iris's voice sharpened. They won't find out. They never do. You clean rooms they don't even enter. This isn't a joke, her mother said, eyes shining. This house feeds us. Iris looked away. Then back again. I just need this, she said quietly. Just once. After that, everything changes. Mrs. Vale knew that look. The desperation dressed up as certainty. She had worn it herself once years ago. Against her better judgment, she nodded. The invitation arrived late Friday afternoon. It wasn't printed. It wasn't formal. Just a message that spread quietly, deliberately, like a secret meant to feel exclusive. Party Saturday night. Private estate. Iris Vale. By the time the final bell rang, everyone was talking about it. Theo announced it loudly at lunch. Maya gasped on cue. An estate? Someone repeated. As in estate? Iris smiled, casual, unbothered. My family doesn't host often. The lie sat heavy on her tongue. But lies were easier when people wanted them to be true. Nola received the invitation last. A message from Evan. You should come. Don't let them decide the story without you. She stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she typed back. Okay. The estate sat on the edge of the city, tucked behind tall gates and old trees. It wasn't flashy from the outside. It didn't need to be. Wealth this old didn't shout. Cars lined the driveway. Music pulsed softly through open windows. Laughter echoed across stone floors. Iris stood at the entrance, radiant. This is insane, Maya whispered, eyes wide. Iris laughed. It's home. Every word tasted like adrenaline. Inside, students wandered through marble halls, touching art they didn't understand, drinking from glasses they couldn't afford. Iris followed them closely, narrating history that wasn't hers. My grandfather imported that. We renovated this wing last year. She never stayed too long in one place. Truth had a way of catching up. Nola arrived quietly. She wore a simple dress. Dark, elegant in a way that didn't demand approval. She paused just inside the doorway, taking in the room with a steady gaze. Something about the house felt familiar. Not emotionally, structurally. Her chest tightened. Evan found her. You made it. Yes. You okay? I think so. Her eyes moved to a portrait on the far wall. She knew that painting. The cracks appeared subtly. A student noticed a woman serving drinks who looked unsettlingly like Iris. Someone else pointed it out. Is that your mom? Iris laughed too fast. No, she's staff. The woman's hands shook. Then she spilled a tray. Glass shattered. Silence followed. In that silence, a truth stood up. A man entered the room. Older, calm, wearing the quiet authority of someone who belonged. He scanned the hall, confused. Who authorized this gathering? He asked. Iris stiffened. I did. The man frowned. Under whose name? Her mouth opened. No sound came out. The man stepped forward. This estate belongs to the Gray family. The room went still. Heads turned, slowly, toward Nola. Understanding moved through the room like a cold wind. Nola closed her eyes briefly. Then she walked forward. My father will be here shortly, she said calmly. The illusion shattered. When Caleb Gray arrived, the house seemed to exhale. His presence changed everything. Conversations died. Faces paled. Phones disappeared. He surveyed the room, then looked at his daughter. Are you all right? Yes, Nola said. His gaze shifted to Iris, the girl who had built her world on borrowed walls. Iris couldn't move, couldn't speak. The applause she'd imagined never came, only silence and judgment. She ran, out the door, down the driveway, away from the life she'd invented. Later, when the house was quiet again, Nola stood alone in the hallway. She didn't feel victorious. She felt sad, because she understood now. Iris had never wanted wealth. She had wanted safety, and she'd burned everything trying to fake it. Monday morning didn't rush in like it usually did. It crept. Ridgecrest Academy felt different, like a place that had just witnessed something it couldn't unsee. Conversations were quieter. Laughter came late and died early. Even the air felt cautious. Iris Vale did not come to school. Her absence was louder than her presence had ever been. Students gathered in small knots, whispering versions of the same story, each one sharper than the last. She lied about everything. That house wasn't hers. Did you see her mom serving drinks? I feel sick just thinking about it. No one defended her. Not really, because admiration at Ridgecrest was rented, not owned. And once the illusion expired, so did loyalty. Nola walked through the gates like she always did. Scooter, backpack, calm steps. But this time people watched her differently. Not with pity, not with suspicion. With recognition. Some looked embarrassed. others curious. A few smiled nervously, as if hoping she wouldn't remember the things they'd said. She didn't react. She never did. In class, a seat remained empty, Iris's seat. The teacher cleared his throat and began the lesson, but his eyes flicked toward the front row more than once. Everyone noticed. No one commented. At lunch, Maya sat alone for the first time since anyone could remember. Theo avoided eye contact. Evan found Nola near the library. "They're calling an emergency board meeting," he said quietly. Nola nodded. "About the party. And everything else." She exhaled slowly. "I figured." Evan hesitated. "You could have exposed her earlier." "You didn't." Nola met his gaze. "Truth doesn't need help." That afternoon, Iris sat in her room with the curtains drawn. Her phone lay face down on the bed. She hadn't turned it on since the night she ran. When she finally did, the screen exploded with missed calls and messages. Not concern, questions, accusations, screenshots, silence. Where praise used to be, her chest felt hollow. She hadn't just lost status. She'd lost the version of herself she believed in. Her mother stood quietly by the door. "I told you," she said gently. "Borrowed lives always come due." Iris didn't respond. Tears slid down her face, not dramatic, not loud, just heavy. At school, the announcement came over the intercom. The voice was formal, careful. "Due to violations of conduct and misrepresentation, the administration has made disciplinary decisions effective immediately." No names were mentioned. None were needed. By the end of the day, Iris's locker was empty. Her name removed from the roster. Just like that. Nola sat beneath the courtyard tree again. Same place, same light. Evan joined her, sitting on the grass this time, not caring who saw. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I think so." "You didn't win anything today," he said. "No," Nola replied softly. "But I didn't lose myself either." Across the campus, Maya watched them from a distance, realization settling in too late. Some power didn't come from taking. It came from standing still when everyone else was scrambling. That night, Iris packed her things. Not designer bags, not jewelry, just clothes, memories, regret. She paused at the mirror one last time. The girl staring back at her looked younger, smaller, stripped of armor. "I just wanted to matter," she whispered. But the room didn't answer. And somewhere else in the city, Nola stood on her balcony, watching lights flicker on and off across the skyline. She knew this wasn't over. Exposure didn't heal wounds. It deepened them. And wounded people, she had learned, were the most unpredictable of all. Iris Vale didn't disappear. She just went quiet. The kind of quiet that wasn't peaceful, only contained. The kind that pressed against the walls of a small apartment, replaying moments on a loop until they sharpened into something unrecognizable. She spent days scrolling through old photos, screenshots of praise, comments that no longer existed, evidence of a life that had once made sense. Every image circled back to the same face, Nola Gray, the girl who hadn't chased attention, the girl who hadn't stolen anything, the girl who had simply existed and watched everything fall apart. Iris told herself she hated Nola, but hatred required clarity. What she felt was messier. At Ridgecrest, the aftermath settled unevenly. Some students avoided Nola out of guilt. Others tried too hard to be friendly. A few whispered apologies that felt more like attempts at self-forgiveness. Nola accepted none of it and rejected none of it. She moved forward. Evan stayed close, not hovering, just present. "People are scared of you now," he said one afternoon, half joking. She smiled faintly. "That's unfortunate." "No," he said. "That's honest." Iris watched from a distance. She didn't attend school anymore, but Ridgecrest lived online. Group chats, private stories, posts that pretended nothing had happened while quietly rewriting the narrative. She saw photos of Nola studying, Nola laughing softly with Evan, Nola unchanged, and that was what broke her. Not success, stability. "How does she still have everything?" Iris muttered, pacing the room. "After what she did to me." Her mother looked up from folding clothes. "She didn't do anything." Iris spun around. "She took my life." Her mother's voice stayed calm. "You built it on lies." The words landed heavy and final. Iris stormed out. She found comfort in one place. A cafe near the old bus stop. Cheap coffee, familiar chaos. That was where she ran into Liam. He wasn't wealthy, wasn't impressive, but he looked at her like she was still something worth choosing. "You okay?" he asked. She smiled, fragile and practiced. "I've been better." They talked, then talked more. She didn't tell him the truth. Not all of it. She never did. Days passed. Iris began stitching a new story. One where she was the victim. One where Nola was manipulative. One where everything that happened was stolen, not self-destructed. She fed the story to Liam in pieces. "She ruined my life," Iris said one night, voice trembling. She knew exactly what she was doing. Liam frowned. "Why would someone do that?" "Because she could," Iris replied. "Because she enjoys it." Liam's jaw tightened. That was all Iris needed. At Ridgecrest, Nola felt it before she understood it. The strange looks, the tension, the subtle withdrawal of warmth. Evan noticed too. "Something's off," he said. "Yes," Nola agreed. "I feel it." She didn't know Iris was watching, learning, planning. One evening, Iris stood in her apartment staring at her phone. Her reflection looked unfamiliar. "This is how I take it back," she whispered. She typed a message. "I need your help." Then another. She can't keep winning. She hit send, and somewhere across the city, a line was crossed quietly, without drama, without witnesses. Because obsession didn't announce itself. It waited. Disappearance never announces itself properly. It doesn't arrive with alarms or dramatic music. It slips in quietly, disguised as routine. A late night, a missed call, a message that doesn't send. Nola Gray didn't come home on a Thursday. At first, no one panicked. She had stayed late at the library before. She sometimes walked instead of riding her scooter, letting the city breathe around her while she thought. Independence had always been her language. But by 9:47 p.m., her phone went straight to voicemail. By 10:15, the unease began to sharpen. By 11:03, Caleb Gray stopped pacing and started making calls. Earlier that evening, Nola had left campus alone. The sky was darkening. Streetlights flickered on. She had her headphones in, low volume, not enough to drown out the world. She liked being aware of her surroundings. That awareness saved her from panic, but not from what came next. "Excuse me." A man's voice, polite, neutral. She turned. He looked ordinary. Clean jacket, calm expression, the kind of face you wouldn't remember twice. "Can you tell me how to get to Crescent Road?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded, lifting her hand to point. That was when everything shifted. A cloth, a sharp chemical smell, strong arms. Her world narrowed. The last thing she saw was the streetlight flickering. When Nola didn't answer Evan's texts, he felt it immediately. Not fear, recognition. He'd grown up around people who hid things well. This felt like that. He went to her apartment. Lights off. No response. He called her father. Caleb Gray didn't ask questions. He acted. Within an hour, security teams were mobilized. Cameras pulled. Routes traced. A reward announced quietly but decisively. Nola Gray was missing. And the city noticed. Iris Vale watched the news from her couch. Her name wasn't mentioned. Not yet. Her hands trembled as she muted the television. Liam sat beside her, jaw tight. "She's gone," he said. Iris swallowed. "I know. This wasn't supposed to go this far," he muttered. She looked at him slowly. "You said you'd help." "I said I'd scare her." Fear crept into his eyes. "Not this." Iris stood. Too late. For the first time, Liam saw her clearly, and it terrified him. The warehouse sat abandoned near the old industrial district. Cold, concrete, smelling of rust and dust. Nola woke slowly. Her head ached. Her wrists burned where rope cut into skin. Her vision blurred, then sharpened. Iris stood in front of her, not polished, not composed, fractured. "You took everything from me," Iris said quietly. Nola said nothing. That silence again. "You think you're better?" Iris continued. "You never had to fight for anything." Nola's voice was steady. "This isn't going to fix you." Iris laughed, high, unstable. "You don't get to diagnose me." She turned to Liam. "Do it." Liam stepped back. "No." Iris's face twisted. "You promised." "I promised I wouldn't let you destroy someone," he said. "Including yourself." For a moment it looked like Iris might collapse. Instead, she reached for her phone. "Then I'll finish it," she said. Across the city, Evan stared at a security monitor. A grainy image froze. A warehouse, a car, a familiar silhouette. "That's her," he said. Caleb's voice was calm, controlled, deadly. "Send everyone." Back in the warehouse, the door slammed open. Light flooded the room. Voices shouted. Iris froze. Nola closed her eyes. Evan rushed forward, cutting her free. Caleb Gray stood in the doorway. And the illusion Iris had built finally, completely, collapsed. Police sirens followed. Handcuffs clicked. Iris didn't scream. She just stared at Nola as she was led away. "I just wanted to matter," she whispered. Nola met her gaze. "You always did," she said. You just chose the wrong way. That night, Nola slept in her own bed. The city exhaled. But everyone knew something had shifted forever. The morning light fell softly through the gray estate windows. Nola Gray sat at the breakfast table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, feeling the quiet of her home like a shield. The city beyond the gates hummed, but inside there was order, routine, safety. Evan poured himself a cup, sitting opposite her. Sleep well? I slept, she said simply. Not smug, not triumphant, just herself. Outside, news vans had been kept at a distance. The story of the night before, the disappearance, the warehouse, the arrests, was already fading from the city's lips. In its place, whispers of courage, calm under pressure, and the kind of respect that isn't borrowed or bought. Iris Vale had been taken into custody. The social media storm followed her like shadows. Students at Ridgecrest whispered about her fall from grace. Her lies, her manipulations, her attempt to control, all laid bare. For the first time, she had nothing to hide behind. Her mother visited once, quietly. No questions, no excuses. Just a look of sorrow and a soft reminder. You can rebuild, but only if you face yourself. Iris sat in her small, stark room, realizing the truth she had always avoided. The world doesn't grant power to those who take it with deceit. Only those who are steady, patient, and grounded survive its storms. At Ridgecrest, life slowly returned to its rhythm. Nola walked the halls again, not with fear, not with arrogance, but with calm certainty. Students who had whispered behind her back now observed in awe, not envy. Not all, of course. Some still clung to rumor. But for the first time, the rumors held no power. In the library, she found solace among books, notes, and sketches, things that mattered. She didn't need attention to define her. Evan stayed nearby, quietly supporting her. Not as a hero, not as a savior, just as someone who understood loyalty and trust. You were incredible, he said one afternoon. As they watched the sunset over the school gardens, Nola shrugged. I just did what I had to do. No, he said softly. You stayed yourself when everyone else tried to change you. That's incredible. She smiled, small, genuine. I guess. I just had people who believed in me. That makes a difference. Weeks later, Nola and Evan sat beneath the old courtyard tree. It had survived the chaos as they had. Do you ever think about her? He asked quietly, meaning Iris. Sometimes, Nola replied. I feel sad for her. She had potential. She just got lost along the way. Evan nodded. And us? We keep going, she said. We don't let fear or jealousy steal our lives. We keep building what matters. At home, Caleb Gray stood at the balcony looking at the city stretching before them. You handled it well, he said to her silently, not needing a conversation. His pride wasn't loud. It was steady, quiet, true. Nola smiled, feeling the weight lift from her shoulders. The storm had passed. The city was still spinning, students still gossiping. But here in this space, she was safe. She was free. She didn't need to prove herself to anyone ever again. Because strength, she realized, isn't loud. It isn't flashy. It isn't the wealth you pretend to have or the drama you survive. It's the calm in your chest, the clarity in your mind, the people you trust, and the courage to stay true when the world is trying to pull you apart. And Nola Gray finally could breathe.